I want to show you the plants that are going to help you increase your vegetable harvest. So if you're growing tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, squash, beans, and more, you need to get pollinators in the garden. And one of the best ways to do that is with some of these amazing native plants. So if you're looking to increase your harvest, this is going to be the video for you. First up, don't have a lot of space but want to get a lot of bees and pollinators in the area of your vegetable garden, start with something like tropical sage. What's great about this plant is it is perfectly designed for our bees. Bees that are honeybees and sweat bees that are perfect for pollinating things like peppers and tomatoes, have a great landing pad so that they can access the nectar inside. If I were adding this to my vegetable garden, I would get something like a 5-gallon pot or a whiskey barrel and start putting in these tropical sages, which come in 3 different colors. You of course have this very vibrant, bright tropical red. We have a classic white, and my favorite is the flamingo pink tropical sage. This is the one that you see in my garden. Now you may be wondering, wait a minute, don't the tomatoes, don't the peppers, don't they have flowers? Can't they use the nectar and pollen from those to eat? And the answer is yes, they can. That's why they're attracted to them. The challenge is they oftentimes aren't producing enough to be food for these bees beyond a very short window. So in order to have lots of bees in the area, you want to have food supply for them all year round. So plants like tropical sage, which bloom almost the entirety of the year, allow for you to have a good sized population of bees ready to go so that when your tomatoes do bloom, they're there to go and pollinate them. Another thing is when you're dealing with something like tropical sage, is this plant is going to put out new flowers almost every single day. But if it's starting to slow down, you can trim this one back. Actually, one of the members of this channel, Isabel, how she turned her tropical sage into a mini hedge. My number 2 pick is going to be firebush. And firebush comes in some smaller sizes and some taller sizes. And this one is really great because I think it's showing off one of the really cool things about firebushes, which is that it starts to change colors as the temperature changes, which means that it's got color and interest all year round. But what is great about this plant is that it's a shrub. So you can get the smaller collusive firebush, or you can get our standard Hamelia patens variety patent, which is what you actually see in my garden, which can become a larger shrub. It can actually become a privacy hedge, or you can even shape it up like a tree. But this plant, almost the entirety of the year, especially during your warm weather crop season, is going to have blooms that are attracting big bees, little bees, and of course, lots of butterflies. And attracting things like giant bumblebees and carpenter bees to your garden can actually be really important for increasing your squash harvest. So if you're growing summer squash, zucchinis, pumpkins, you want to get those big buzzing bees who are great at pollinating those big flowers. So plants like firebush are really good because they're an all-around plant. They get the big bees, they get the little bees. They're going to really help you have a much bigger harvest. And I know I'm not the only one who has ideas about increasing our harvest with native plants. So if you have some great tips for those who want to get into native plants and get more and more pounds of vegetables, go ahead and let us know down in the comments below. Now those first 2 plants have a tropical look, and for my South Floridians and Central Floridians, you love a tropical look. But you may be like me and you actually want a bit more of that cottage garden feel to your garden. And this next plant is going to help bring the cottage garden vibes while bringing you the pollinators. Gray leaf tea bush, also known as tea bush in the native trade. This one has more of a willowy, wispy look. In my garden, this is taking almost like, it reminds me a little bit of a willow, but you can see things like our butterflies are on here and tons of bees. And what's great about this plant is you can see it has some of those kind of cooler looking leaves. You're kind of more in that gray, silvery tone, but also most of the year it's blooming with these pink flowers that are high nectar that your pollinators are gonna love. It doesn't take up a huge amount of space. It only gets about 4 or 5 feet wide and can get up to 10 feet tall depending on your sun location. But this is kind of one of those set and forget plants. Do you see the bees flying around in here? That if you had it near your pollinator, near your vegetable garden, you're definitely going to increase those harvests. Hi bee, you just hanging out on the nectar plant side? Taking a nap. I really like this one. It definitely gives that cottage garden vibe to my garden. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, aren't we heading towards those cooler seasons? Is there anything that's going to bloom through those cooler winter months? And calamint is going to be for you. This is a lower shrubbing native plant that is in the mint family and has a minty smell if you do any amount of pruning. But you can see these white purple flowers clustering around. And as the months get cooler, it's just gonna add more and more flowers. And one of the things I like about calamint is because it's kind of that lower shrubby plant, it can take a really hard prune. I've had people at Sweet Bay give me the feedback that you can give them a really hard prune and they bounce right back. So if you're new to the pruning game and you're a little hesitant, maybe chopping some of your vegetables, you can take a practice with the calamint, increase flowers, increase pollinators, and increase harvest. I feel like this one would be a really good one to pair with tea bush. It's one of the things I've been thinking about for my garden. Another one to consider adding is this false rosemary. It's another plant that only gets a couple feet tall and has, you can see, these huge white, pale, pink, purple blooms that the bees love. And it's one of those ones that you could add to a large pot or in ground in standard landscaping nearby your vegetable garden that doesn't take up a lot of space but has a lot of impact. And it's one of those ones that's going to do more blooming in the seasons when we are having our tomatoes flower, our peppers flower, and all of our warm weather crops flowering. So having these have a lot of available flowers at that time of year would be really important. Hi bee, I saw you. Now in the world of butterfly and bee gardening, a lot of people will tell you add a lantana, but a word of warning, if you go to Home Depot and Lowe's, you're gonna end up with a lantana that's invasive to our home state. So instead, when you go to the native nursery, you wanna pick up the lantanas from there. And these ones, well, they're gonna have a lot of bees. So for my people who want more of the cottage garden look with their vegetable gardens, I would pick Lantana involucrata, AKA button sage. And what's great about this plant is it is a small shrub. It's very bushy, and you get these clusters, AKA umbels, of teeny tiny flowers. You can see they're white with a little bit of pink and then a yellow center. And it blooms with these all year. Then what happens is it will drop the flowers and then you start to get berries. Let me see if I can find some. And this will get songbirds and birds in your gardens. And why that can also be helpful, bonus tip, is keeping songbirds near your garden. While they're not going to help pollinate your plant, they will help eat some of those caterpillars and bugs that are trying to eat your vegetables. So get the pollinators nearby, but also keep some songbirds too, increasing your harvest. Maybe you don't want the cottage look. Maybe you don't want those cooler tones. You want to stay a little bit more tropical, or you want a shrub that doesn't get quite as big. Let's pick our other native lantana, also known as Rockland lantana, Lantana depressa, variety depressa. This plant is definitely going to be the one that brings the pollen. And similar to our other native lantana, it's going to do all the same things, but it's doing it with yellow. Look at this amazing yellow, yellow, orange. One of the distinctive features, because you might go to a Home Depot or Lowe's and think that they have this, notice how the leaves are tight and curled. That's one of the key differences. And I have videos that take deep dives into our native lantanas, invasive lantanas, and much more. These ones are phenomenal at attracting bees of all sizes and butterflies. They love these little cup-shaped flowers for landing on. So having this on a perimeter shrub around your vegetable garden or near your vegetable garden is gonna help increase your harvest. And similar to the larger shrubbing one, this one will also bring in birds to eat the berries. Now you may be wondering, how close do you have to have some of these plants to your vegetable garden? So one option is you can get some giant whiskey barrels or plant right in the ground and the edges of your vegetable garden. That would be an amazing way. And if you do it on different corners of your vegetable gardens, it causes the pollinators to be crisscrossing. And as they're crisscrossing, if there's an extra flower like an eggplant or a tomato or a squash plant, it just increases the odds that they're gonna go visit that flower too. But that might not be as realistic for you, and you might want to have some clearer pathways or have this stuff, especially if it's going to be a perennial plant, you know, you plant it once and forget it, like all the ones that I'm showing you. Those ones, as long as they're within 10 feet of your garden, you're going to get the benefits of the pollinators being able to feed there. They don't stay in tiny places, but the closer you can get, the easier it is for them to find your vegetable flowers and the more harvest you'll get. Now, some of you have really tiny gardens and you don't have a ton of space to be able to be putting in all these large plants, and you want to prioritize your vegetables. And I totally understand that. So I started thinking, what could we do outside of the box to help you get some pollinators in your garden? And here are some ideas that you might not have considered. And this next option, well, have you considered replacing your lawn? Because you can add native plants like this frog fruit as a lawn alternative. Actually, if you ever notice in my vegetable garden, a lot of the lawn, a lot of the grass around it is actually frog fruit. Frog fruit is a native plant that can be mowed, it can be trimmed. But what's really cool about it is there are these matchstick looking flowers with very teeny tiny flowers on them. And these bloom the majority of the year, especially at the time of year when we have things like tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, all those warm weather crops in place. And this can be a way that you can have bees all year round without actually having dedicated spots for bees. If this idea has got you excited, I actually have a video that goes into lots of different types of native lawn alternatives that you could consider for your garden. So keep an eye out for that video at the end, because that may be a better solution for you. Now, I know some of you are out there going like, I want the bees, but I don't want to be stung. Let me give you some reassurance. As someone who has a husband who's very scared of bees, we have so many bees in our garden. The majority of bees that are native to Florida are solitary bees. And while you might think, does that just mean they're lonely? No. What it means is it's just a mommy and her babies are somewhere else. And if she stings you, she dies, and so do her babies, which means she really, really does not want to sting you. So move slowly or just hold in place and they will move out of the way. I oftentimes am working in plants that have bees all over them, and I just move slowly, giving them a respectful amount of space so that they can get out of the way so I can do the work that I need. I know that can be really hard to hear, but fast movements and sudden yanking around, that's no good. You're freaked out, they're freaked out, it's not a good situation. But staying calm, staying still, and moving slowly allows for you to get where you want and them to get out of your way. If this has got you excited to learn more about native plants, go ahead and check out this video about lawn alternatives, this video about edible native plants, and this one about the 10 beginner plants that you should add to your garden. And okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.